Perfect. All right. Well, morning everybody, and welcome to our third and final customer operational meeting for 2022. We've got a small crowd again, so we've had a reasonable crowd at Warcool yesterday, and we had a very intimate crowd yesterday at Deniliquin. So I did share a little bit of information that it looks like we're getting much better hits when we put things online. So we're going to probably go away and do a little bit of work on how we might make some of the information you'll see today a bit more accessible online going forward. For those that haven't met me, my name's Scott Barlow. I'm the General Manager of Operations. So obviously today what we've managed to do is bring along all of our operational management team. They're the people that any customer facing service or any service that affects customers indirectly are available today to answer any questions you might have. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Most of you have probably been here a million times, but obviously we've got toilets on both sides. We will be videoing today. It's not about videoing you, it's all about having the content available so that we can put it online after the meeting. The only other thing I will mention is there's tea and coffee to the side here, and there'll be refreshments, I think morning tea after we get through the presentation. Yesterday took around about an hour and a quarter for the presentation with very few questions. Was 2 1/4 at Warcool with a number of questions, so that'll give you some idea about how long this will take today. Just in terms of who we are and who you'll hear from today. Obviously, and I'll just ask them to put their hands up in case you haven't seen or met any of them before, but first of all, we'll have our Reliability Manager, Adelaide McLeod. Then we'll have our Maintenance Manager, Nick Warren. Jeff Mann, our Customer Support Manager. Jared Pearce. So Jared will be talking to us about the control system today. He's our Operations Manager. Josh Bode. Josh is our Customer Accounts Manager. And then we'll have a section at the end where we'll hear from Michael Pisasali, who's going to talk to us about water policy. It's always a good opportunity, even though it's not an operational topic, it's a good opportunity for you to hear what we're working on in that water policy space. So thank Michael for coming along. So what is the new operational structure? Well, the company just recently has had a little bit of realignment with its structure, and as I mentioned, all of these operational functions are now reporting through to me. Just to give you an idea about what each of them do, I guess in a nutshell, if you look at reliability, which is Adelaide's area, they're all about making sure the assets are fit for purpose and available for use when we need them. For Nick, as the maintenance manager, a lot about the civil and the earthen assets, but making sure the channel is ready to go whenever you guys order water. For Jeff, the customer service team, they're the ones you speak to on the phone or via email all the time. So they're on the front line, and Jeff will go to some detail today about how that works for you as a customer to get resolution. The control system's an interesting one. It's something that obviously is very close to everyone here, but you may not have heard a lot about. It's what we've been working towards over the years, and so Jared's going to give you a bit of insight into our journey, some of the challenges, and where we're headed with the control system. The customer accounts team, Josh will give you a bit of insight into what they do, but it's a lot to do with troubleshooting. Okay, they're the ones that deal with any complex inquiries. And then the two that you won't hear from today, but they are very important to us as an operational team, are the IT team. They obviously, IT's everywhere, but it certainly underpins everything we do as a company now. And safety probably goes without saying when you've got 100 odd people running around out in the field on heavy machinery or driving around the countryside, that safety is a big part of the operations team. Just a bit of, I guess, a recap of the last 10 years. So back in around 2012, just earlier than that, but in 2012, we started installing all of our assets under the PIOP upgrade. So that took some time, and by 2017 that was largely complete, and most of you would have been getting delivery either through a mechanised regulator and or an upgraded outlet. In the last 5 years, what we've had to do is start using those and working towards what Jared will talk to you about today, which is the remote control system. That's had its challenges, but we're pretty comfortable that it's delivering on the 3 items that we looked for when we developed the control system. That one, we wanted it to be reliable. Well, it has been reliable. It's been efficient. That's been proven. That's probably been the best performing part of the control system. And cost effective. Yet to be proven, but we'll see. So far, so good. Looking forward, you'll hear a lot about that today. So Jared's going to explain to you, and Adelaide will to some degree, what we have ahead of us and what we're going to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years. It's probably a good segue, I guess, into what I've asked the guys to talk about today. One, each of them will talk to you briefly about the results they've achieved for the past 12 months. But what I've asked them to do is talk to you about the challenges they've got in their own areas so that you can understand what they're doing. And then I've asked them to share what we're proposing to do about some of those challenges. So they will be looking for your feedback. If you've got feedback, feel free to speak up during their presentation, or alternatively, obviously you can wait. They'll ask for questions at the end. So as I said, some good questions out at Warcool yesterday. I guess the only other thing I would say before I hand over to the team is we are aware, obviously, it's going to be a big delivery year for us. It's not often that we have all of our customers at 110% this early in the season. And, you know, obviously because sometimes the allocation builds slowly, some may have had high carryover. You know, there's a combination of things. It doesn't matter this year. Everyone's able to plan for a big season. So we're relying on our 3-year rolling maintenance program that we put in place. That's done a full rotation now. We're confident that it should be able to deliver the volumes of water that we're expecting. We had significant questioning around flow restrictions out at Warcool because they're the biggest, they're the most impacted normally in a big delivery year. So we think we've got most things under control. We've done everything we can for a big delivery year, and there's not much more that we're concerned about. So just to put your minds at rest if you were worried, I think through the presentations today you'll see that our strategies have been put in place to make sure that we're capable of delivering, you know, maybe 1,000, 1,100 GLs this year. With that, if there's no questions of me or the new structure, and I'll come back at the end to close the meeting out, I'll just hand over first to, I think it's Adelaide first. Yep.
Hi everyone, so yeah, as Scott said, I'm Adelaide McLeod, or Ali that know me personally here, and I'm the Reliability and Control System Manager, which is probably just a fancy way of saying engineering manager. So my team, as Scott said, are responsible for the maintenance and capital replacement programs for all of our infrastructure. So we have a really large asset portfolio here, so it's actually almost $1 billion. So there are a lot of challenges there in terms of making sure that maintenance is fit for purpose and keeping those fees as low as we can. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of our key challenges at the minute in that space and explain how we're proposing to overcome them, but then specifically where we need help from all the landholders to ensure that those solutions actually work. So the first one I was going to talk about is the maintenance of our mechanical infrastructure. So as Scott mentioned, we've just finished our pilot project. We've upgraded majority of our regulators, offtakes and outlets. So what that means is we now have $165 million of mechanical assets on our books that we have to maintain, but also start saving for replacement. If you look at best practice maintenance in the industry, you're looking at spending up to 5% annually on maintenance. So in our case, with $165 million worth of fleet, that's up to $8.25 million a year that we would need for maintenance. So our entire infrastructure budget for all of our assets is around that 10 million, so we don't want to spend anywhere near that $8.25 million. It would have a huge effect on fees. Just to sort of justify that a bit more, last year was 110% allocation year, and we only had 65% of our outlets irrigate at all. So we're dealing with 35% of the fleet and not actually being utilised in our biggest years. So that really tells us that we've got to be really clever about targeting maintenance and making sure that we're not gold-plated maintenance when it's potentially not needed across all assets. So luckily for us, we've got this new control system that Jared will talk to a bit later, but our control system, our new one, is one of the biggest in Australia, and the main reason for that is the amount of tags that we monitor in the field. So we monitor over 1 million tags, out in the field, specifically on our mechanical and electrical assets. So this here is what, it's hard to see with the glare, I'm sorry, but this is our triage system. So we pull this from the control system specifically for maintenance. So this was a screenshot I took a couple of weeks ago on season opening. So all these dots, they're all the faults. There's a lot of them. So the faults that are pulling through here are things like flat batteries getting close to flat, gearboxes that are starting to seize or over torque, level sensors that are silted up, all stuff like that. There's lots of tags we pull. Comms becoming weak. So we pulls all in here, and then what we do is we review it, check that we think, yep, that battery needs to be replaced, and then we raise a work order for Nick's team that go out to the field and fix it. So as you can see, lots of faults come through. Where this tool becomes really invaluable is if we can prioritise all that work against where sort of the most critical. So you can see up the top, it's really hard to read, I'm sorry, but the first priority is regulators and offtake. So if we have a fault come up on a regulator and offtake, that's our number one priority. We've got to get out there straight away and fix it. The next is outlets irrigating, which is effectively the same priority. Straight away, we've got to get out there. The third priority is if there's an order in on an outlet and we can see the order start date, so we know that before that order starts, we've got to fix that fault. The fourth one is from the intention surveys that we send out. So where you've come back in the intention survey and said, I'm going to be using this outlet, we can see that and we can make sure we also put that in as a priority. The next bucket is, you haven't said you're going to use the outlet, there's no orders, we're still going to fix the fault, but we are out at these sites every year, so we can just fix those faults when we're next there and we're not doubling up on the costs of the maintenance and spending too much money when it's not required. So I suppose the take home of this, we're not getting really good participation rates on our intention survey. So the one that just went out, I think we had 10% participation rate. So it's making it really difficult for us to get the most out of these tools. So we'd love to see the participation rate on those surveys come up a lot, and the idea being that then we can really target our maintenance and make sure we're not spending excessive money maintaining 35% of structures that aren't going to go. So that's that one. The next one that I'll just talk to really quickly is the AMRR. So we talk about this a lot. It's one of our biggest challenges. It's going to remain so for quite some time. As I mentioned, $1 billion worth of infrastructure. We've got the job of trying to make sure, forecast all that capital replacement coming up and make sure we're saving enough money to fund it. So unfortunately, a large proportion of our network, particularly our civil assets, were built in the 40s and 50s. They're coming to the end of their life. We've been doing a huge amount of work at the minute on our civil assets, on life extension works, and we're having some really good results. We've managed to, in the last few years, reduce our upcoming liability by $30 million, so we are having some good success rates there. But unfortunately, when you're looking at assets such as access bridges, public bridges, which we're working with the councils on, they're overloaded. They're not designed to carry the weights of today, so they're a problem we do need to deal with. I suppose one thing that my team are always trying to review is, do we need $1 billion worth of infrastructure in this footprint? Are all of these assets genuinely required? And if so, are we willing to pay for them? How are we going to pay for them? So you will hear from us a lot around this, particularly on assets on your farm, particularly bridges. If we come across a bridge that needs significant work or needs replacing, chances are someone from Josh's team will be out to see you to talk about future need if you need it. So that explains why we're doing that. So there, Nick will now talk a bit more about the specific maintenance of the channels.
G'day everyone, Nick Warren for those of you that haven't met me. So planning and maintenance manager at Irrigation. So the simple way of describing that is basically doing what Adelaide's team, implementing the strategy that Adelaide's team develops, basically. So the only thing I really want to talk to you quickly about today is our weed and silt strategy. So weed and silt, as you would all know, and you can see it in your own channels and stuff, but it's a major problem for us and a major cost for us annually. So at the moment, excavation is the most viable tool that we've got available to us. So you'd see over the off-season, you'd see we've got a lot of excavators running around the countryside. And over the last few years, which I'll get to in the next slide, we aim to do about 300 kilometres each winter. So we've done over 1,000 over the last 4 winters. So it's not ideal, but it is certainly the best we've got at the moment. And I want to talk to you about where we need your help, which again comes back to those watering intentions. So we'll just skip through this briefly. So 4 years ago, as you would probably all know, we shifted our maintenance strategy to basically shut down a third of the system each winter and really target that area for maintenance and maintenance on our civil and mechanical assets. So we were sort of year-round desilting, and we still do target areas where we have to, but the focus moved away from year-round keeping a few excavators going to putting we have 30 to 40 contractors on each winter now, and just target as much of the footprint as we can. So each year we average over 200 kilometres in the winter, so it's closer to 300. This year was more like 200 because some of the channels were a bit bigger, but yeah, it's generally between 200 and 300 kilometres each winter. And then throughout the season, any areas that are really bad that we're having trouble delivering water to, we'll target as well. So there's a photo coming up which you may or may not be able to see, but one of the things we're really confident in is by cleaning out these channels over winter, we're able to have a really good look at them and there's no water on, and we get to reprofile them essentially. So it just gives us a lot longer before we have to go back there. Some of the data that we've got is basically if we desilt it over winter, we're about 4 or 5 times less likely to have to come back to that channel before the next time it's drained. Whereas if we target it in season, often we find ourselves back there the next year because we just can't get everything out. So this next slide here, you can see on those 2 photos there, the top one's just a channel we're desilting this winter, but you can see it gives us a really good chance to just fully reprofile those batters, which is a really good mitigation against weed and silt buildup. And the bottom one there is a channel that we desilted 4 years ago, and apart from that roly-poly you can see in the bottom, it's still pretty well spotless. So it just gives us a lot of confidence in the strategy that we're using going forward. Like everything, and sort of similar to what Adelaide was saying, it's a matter of weighing up the want to have really clean channels everywhere and the likelihood that it's going to cause supply issues. So you may very well see a channel that looks filthy, but based on the watering intentions we've got or the likelihood of that channel to run a big volume of water, we'll prioritise that based on whether it's going to actually cause supply restrictions. So if you do have channels that look dirty, by all means raise it, but it might just be lower down our priorities list and we're not going to get there this year because it's not going to cause a problem for us. So the more information that we can have, which comes back to that watering intentions again, helps us prioritise where we're going to go and do work. So for example, if we know there's a whole lot of summer crop going in down the end of a small channel, well, we're going to make sure that's clean. Whereas if it's a big channel and it's a bit dirty, but there's not a whole lot of demand or not a whole lot of outlets that are going to irrigate, then we're probably going to leave it and try and target that in that off-season when it's drained over that 3-year cycle. Probably the other one that always comes up is what chemicals are you guys looking at? So obviously if it's your own channel on farm, there's probably things you'd look at using. We can't, simply due to the withholding periods and the fact that our channels aren't stock proof. So we've got stock and we've got different crops, we've got organic farms and whatever. So at the moment, there's really no chemicals that are a viable option to keep the weeds out of our channels. So there's a couple other things we're looking at, and we're always looking at the chemical options that we've got. And then there's also a couple of machines they're using up in Murrumbidgee, which we're pretty keen to have a look at over the next couple of years and see how they go. But for now, we're just sort of really sticking to our planned maintenance strategy, which is every 3 years try and do as much of that drained area as possible, and hopefully that'll keep the water flowing over summer. So last year we found in our biggest year for probably 5 or 6 years, we had a couple of restrictions, but generally speaking that strategy seemed to be working. So we're hoping it is going to get us through again this year, but as you will all see, there'll be still excavators running around putting out sort of spot fires as we see them pop up as summer comes along. So by all means get in touch if you think your channel's going to have any flow restrictions on it due to weeds, and we might look at it and say yay or nay.
Thanks, Nick. I'm Jeff Mann, Customer Service Manager, and here to talk about what will be your experience when you contact the company, what will happen for you. So we've currently revisited our model for what happens when you contact us and done a few tweaks to it. But it's based on 3 key functional areas that I'll take you through now. And the first step of those is the help centre. That's what happens when you ring us, contact us, you'll hit there. They will answer your questions, action your request. Common questions we get are things like, what's the balance of my account? How do I transfer water? And we guide you through that process. Or how do I reset my passwords? Another common one now with the new systems. If the help centre can't answer your question, then they will ask you a series of other questions to make sure they understand what you're trying to get out of the inquiry you're making. This enables them to make sure they can get you to the right place in the next stage of what we call a pathway through the company. So they'll ask a series of questions so we can get into the knowledge subject matter expert areas. They also capture your inquiry in our customer system, which ensures that we're able to track and manage your inquiry. So as soon as you contact, that's captured, so then we can ensure that we get closeouts on those inquiries. They're not just scribbled on a piece of paper and then forgotten about, and then you don't get the follow-up. It's all into a system now, the way we work. The help centre's provided 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m, 7 days a week in the current formation. So the second stage is the knowledge areas. These staff provide detailed responses and action, and they drive resolution of your query within their area. They're developing their skills to be able to do that, and I'll talk about that in some of our challenges. And the 3 key knowledge areas that we have that will make sense when I go through them is around water. First one's water delivery, and that's what we used to call the old planners, and many of you ring up and say, can I talk to the planner, sort of? That's the old planner department. They're involved in all aspects of delivering your water, getting the orders all into the system correctly, getting our supply from Water New South Wales correctly, managing your meter readings and discrepancies, managing the outlets, the configuration of the outlets so you can get your supply right. So they look after all of that, and they have the knowledge in that whole area. The next knowledge area is the control room and the control system operators, and Jared's going to take you through the control system in the next set of slides. So they're really tasked with executing the plan that the water delivery guys hand over every day. They execute that to deliver the water to your farm gate and ensure it's delivered in full and on time. The third area is water trade. That's where we act on all aspects of your account configuration. That includes permanent trading and temporary trading now. So a recent change in the company has been that permanent trade area has moved into the customer operations department. So that's where we manage all of that. So what you should experience from the knowledge areas, you should experience the resolution of your inquiry within the capacities that we work in, what we call a rules-based system. So within the parameters they work in, where there's known outcomes, they should be able to resolve it for you. They also, what you should experience, and you'll hear this a few times today, we're currently pushing to, they should be also identifying issues from their knowledge of the area they're in prior to you picking them up. So Jared will talk more about that from the control system aspect, but what you should be experiencing is more outward phone calls, letting you know things, we need to fix this, we found this, or whatever's happening. The third part then of the pathways model as we move through it is the customer relationship officers, or the accounts team, which Josh manages. These work to rectify the issues experienced by customers, or rectify issues when things go wrong, or act on inquiries which do not have a known outcome and are what we call complex in nature. One of their key activities, and what you'll expect from them, is they'll undertake catching up with you, understanding and setting and managing your expectation. So Josh will talk about that as well when we talk to some performance of the model, essentially in his slides. So a change you may be experiencing in that customer relationship space at the moment is with permanent trade coming in. We're moving through a process where now when we become aware that you are buying or selling land and things, that we contact you in the first instance now and have a chat and come out and have a chat and talk about, and do a complete health check. We really want to understand what you want to do. We've experienced where customers, we suddenly see a form from a solicitor, they're buying land, then down the track we find out actually they want to amalgamate that as well, and then I actually want to talk about supply points and things like that because I want to bring it into one holding. So if we want to come out and talk about that at the beginning, get the full picture, then develop a whole plan of approach for that, and then draft up a service level agreement about these are the steps we need to do to get to your end result. Also work with you to set timelines around that so you understand what's going to happen along that whole phase and we're then accountable around those timelines, and then walk the journey with you so you get the results you want at the end. Other key activities that the relationship office undertake are intelligence gathering, and that's a bit of a theme. You know, I hear that coming through today in both Adelaide and Nick's delivery, and some comments from the floor. The more intelligence we can get from you in the way we operate now, the better we can deliver services to you. So why do we have the service delivery model? We put it in place because, the first step of it is because we want to capture and record your requests. We really want to be able to use that to ensure we monitor what's happening, and also enables us to train staff. You know, we can do all of that with the information you gather from you. It also ensures that the capturing and tracking of requests and handling by the help centre or the subject matter experts also ensures that we have clear communication about what's happening and supports us in providing a consistent level of service and message to you. We also do it all in the triage framework. Again, you'll hear that a lot today through a number of the activities we do, and that's all about ensuring we're always focused on the highest risk activities and applying the appropriate resources and actions. As Adelaide talked to, we can certainly build a gold-plated service, but a gold-plated service costs a lot of money, so we're constantly balancing that tension between appropriate resources and getting the outcomes right. Putting this all together and taking these actions, we aim to provide the appropriate resolution. It's important to say that both this drawing and the previous one works from left to right, and if you try to come in at a different point, I think you're going to end up frustrated. So I really want to encourage everybody to call the 1300 number. That's where you start, and then you flow through the process from there, and hopefully that's a good experience for you, from it getting it either actioned in the first instance, resolved in the next segment, or somebody's going to talk to you about the longer term, how we can resolve it when it's a long, complex matter. So the challenges we face. So as I said, we've just done a bit of tweaking of the model. Previously, we were quite focused on trying to multi-skill the team so that we were aimed at trying to resolve at the point of contact. So some reflection from both customers and internally was that was a challenge for staff to understand all elements. As you would know, it's a very complex business. We're a simple business to order delivery, but it's very complex from all the parts that move in it and all the different actions. So the reflection has taken us to the help centre approach and the subject matter areas experts. So we're still transitioning. That's just been rolled out earlier this year with staff. Staff have found their home where they sit in that model, and we're working through that. Resources have also been a challenge in the last period. As I'm sure many of you are aware from your own activities, the recruitment market's quite tough at the moment. We've been struggling to fill some positions. We've finally got them up and that now, and the team's running in that. And the challenge that I face every day is around getting the resource balance right. My piece of the whole jigsaw you're hearing today is a very reactive space. We have days where everybody wants to call us on the phone, and we have days where nobody calls us. So we have a very peak and trough thing that's driven by seasonal activity or weather events. All sorts of things drive that. We do try to predict that as much as possible, but it's about getting the resource balance right to be able to get it right when there's a peak, but also not be inefficient when there's a drop in the demand as well. So that's a battle that we face as well, getting that right. And as I said, Also, then the final one is really around that skills and knowledge. We've had a number of new staff starting with us recently. You'll hear some different voices on the phones and that, so we're still in that build phase of that. You know, this company in this industry, you take a season really for anybody new to understand all the elements of a whole seasonal activity, and then you've even got to apply a couple of seasons with the variations that occur through the different different processes that happen when we have different allocations and that. So we're still building those knowledges and skills. And also part of that knowledge and skill is a reflection that a lot of, and where we've been focused in our recent recruitment, has really been quite a skill swap out. We really are operating a much more technical, like a tech sort of company now. We're using tools and interfaces that are different to the old manual system. Part of the journey that Jared will touch on is the journey from manual through to where we have the control system. So we are looking for different skill sets now, and that's part of the changeover we're currently in at the moment. So looking forward, what will you expect? Hopefully you'll be hearing from us more. We'll be on the phone calling to you saying, oh, we've just picked up your outlet's not operating as expected. We're working on it now. We expect a recovery in 6 hours, or whatever the approach is. Things like that. There'll be a standardisation of operations coming through. Jared will talk more about this as well, but you'll see that. That's about the consistency of service no matter what part of the system you're in. And finally, we're always aiming to improve your online experience, because your ability to be able to self-serve online when it suits you is really the best service we can provide. So we're always looking for ways to improve that capacity. So happy to chat to anybody later. If you've got any ideas, please let us know. I haven't touched much on performance yet, but Josh is going to touch on that in his slides. But yeah, that's my presentation.
Hello, I'm Jared Pearce. I'm the Operations Manager for Murray Irrigation. Today I'm just going to give a brief history of our journey to date, which Scott's already touched on. Just explain to everyone what our new control system is, explain our vision and our plan for the future. So as Scott mentioned, had the pipe upgrades over the last 10 years or so. Before that, we had 10 years of AWMA upgrades in bits and pieces. The control system over the last 3 years has really had a lot of work put into it through stage 2, through Adelaide's team and the ICT managers team. Have done a power of work in that space to build our control system. My job is to come in and integrate that essentially into business as usual. So started with the vision, strategy and objectives for the year, and then developed a 3-year plan, which we'll go through today. Before I get there, we'll explain probably the point of difference in what the new Murray Irrigation control system is. So as you can see there, it starts with your demand that comes in through the DMS, through the custom water ordering system. We've got the control system in the middle, which is the platform that imports that demand and gets the data from the field devices. And this is the change, I suppose, is that the control system now calculates the regulated position and operates those outlets over that 12-hour period. We've still got our operators who sit there and monitor the system and execute it, but they don't. They no longer sit there and run through intuition and experience to actually work out how much water needs to go down each channel on any given day compared to the demand and those sorts of things. The system does all that calculation in the background, and the operators are purely reviewing it and then executing it and then monitoring to see how, monitoring for the rest of the day essentially, and then intervening by exception when they need to. And then the field devices send and receive all the data. So field devices have been upgraded over the last 20 years to get it to the point where they can do that. So our vision for the future of how the control system will work, it'll be fit for purpose, and this is what it is today. So this is what Adelaide's teams and the ICT managers teams provided us already. It's a fit for purpose solution that's, it's not gold plated and it's less expensive to maintain than other systems on the market essentially. So as Scott mentioned, it's already reliable and efficient. We want to look at improving the reliability, obviously, and the efficiency down the track. The two parts here that we really are looking to get into in the next couple of years, though, is the flexibilities this year, the flexibility and the responsiveness of the system. So they're the two focuses you'll see throughout my presentation as well. So how do we get there? So the objectives of how we're going to get there are through monitoring. So we're going to improve that responsiveness through 24/7 monitoring, and we're looking to get to notification within the hour for operating issues. Standardising operations, as Jess mentioned, around having rules-based procedures and processes so that we're delivering a standard level of service day in, day out. And increasing the performance, so increase reliability and the flexibility of the channel system through prioritising the channel performance over individual outlets and then balancing that against the delivery efficiency. So that's not to say that individual outlets aren't important. What it is to say is that if we can get our channel heights right and keep them consistent, we'll be able to deliver all of our outlets in full and on time every day, as opposed to chasing our tail if we get in trouble through infrastructure issues or different bits and pieces. So in the past we may have had an outlet start to, the flow rate dropped off, and we would do everything we could to get the water through to that outlet. Now we're going to make a call early on that, see what we can do. If we need to slow that outlet down or shut it off to be able to get the channel back up to supply quicker, we'll do that. Let the customer know, obviously, consult earlier, so that then when other people come on, we don't create this string of effects that the channel just keeps the channel height keeps getting degraded over that period of time. So that's another just a change in mindset of how we're operating, and that's how the control system works. It likes to be essentially it likes to be at its required operating level, whether that's full or whether it's depending on the mode, dictates that. So we're going to use those objectives to create our metrics for the talking water. So they're the performance metrics you'll see week to week. So they should be out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, so that's our plan and that's how we want to get there. I'll go over how we're going to get there, but first of all, I'll give you a quick update on where we are today. So over the last 12 months, we've been integrating the project whilst running the system, so that's been quite a large challenge for the operators, and they've done a really good job of that whilst delivering 800 GL in 100% allocation year. We've integrated the 24/7 control room, so we've got guys who work 12-hour shifts overnight now, as opposed to working and then covering alarms overnight, and we're changing out our skill set to standardise our operations. So we've got less and less experienced guys, and I've got more and more people coming in with control systems background, which has been a challenge to find those skills in the market at the moment, obviously. So the customer impacts you would have noticed over the last season, we did have some channel fluctuation, so we were seeing about 85% of the time at that required operating level, which was within 50 mil either way. We're targeting 95%, so that's our new target. We've had systems gaps which have allowed you, the customers, to know there's problems before we do, and we're getting contacted, which is obviously not ideal, and that's one of the key focuses, is to become more responsive, that we know about things before you do. And the last one was where 2.4% of orders weren't delivered in full and on time over the entirety of the order. So this season we've changed that metric to 2% over the daily default, so every day, making sure that we've got 98% of deliveries being delivered every single day. So that's where we are today, where we want to get to this season. So we've got a couple of changes still to implement to continue to improve the control system. So we've got the alarm management system upgrade, which is a visualisation upgrade of the alarms, so that the operators can be more responsive to those alarms and meet that hour deadline that or challenge that I've set them. The execution schedule update, it's been set on the old control system, original control system, I should say, and it needs to be upgraded to align with the new system, so it allows us to bring these standardised operations and become more responsive. And our reporting, so at the moment we don't have a lot of reporting, but we need our reporting so we can measure our performance and then start to look to improve in different areas as well. So the customer impacts of what you'll get this season, so it'll still be possible that you'll discover operating issues before we do, and that's purely because the alarm management system's actually quite a large package of work that'll take a while to come in still. And it won't be for everything, but there's some things that you may still see. So again, would continue to call us as you have done in the past. Your outlet run times are likely to change, and that's I've booked that in for the 20th of September, so there'll be some comms come out in the next couple of weeks around that, where that's going to. You'll see with our 24-hour control room monitoring, and we'll be intervening earlier, so overnight if we're having issues and those sorts of things that are starting to impact our channel performance, the operators will intervene, and then we'll contact you in the morning and let you know. So it'll be things like if you weren't taking your flow because it's backed up and those sorts of things, the guys will look at what they need to do to keep the channel performing, get onto this first thing in the morning, let you know what's happened, what the plan is, how we can go about it, those sorts of things. So expect more proactive communications from the control room, and I do have new people in my team, so you'll have a few new voices on the phone there. And as I've said, we're looking to prioritise that channel performance as well. So that's this season, and the next season is where we're looking to really have that vision sort of implemented. So the opportunities that we're looking to explore are around improving the maintenance monitoring. So Adelaide mentioned there's about 1 million tags, or over 1 million tags we're monitoring every day. A lot of those are actually maintenance tags, so there's a lot of opportunity there to assist in the reliability side of things through the control system, to highlight where to not only have our demand but also have our performance monitoring of our assets, the data for that a lot better, so we know where we need to go as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and also the weed side of things. So with our alarms, we get those right, we can actually start to turn on more alarms in different areas on outlets and offtakes and those sorts of things, so we can actually get a better view of where our demand's being impacted by our weeds. So a little bit less reliant, we'll still be reliant, but a little bit less reliant on the guys in the field to be able to make a judgment call on what the impact on demand is. The other opportunity, which is around that around that vision, how I was talking about flexibility, is around develop the initiatives to operate the channels differently. So we'll be in contact, this is where we want to get to at the moment. So we want to get to a point where we're contacting people around so intention surveys will be important. Josh's team and the planners will be involved in this as well, around understanding intentions for the season. So not just running channels full all year round because we're in mode 3 and everyone's got 110% allocation. Going out and talking to people about what their intentions are, so we can say, right, and the system's quite good and it'll allow us to run things differently. So if the main needs to be running mode 3, which is full, that's fine, but there might be spurs off it that don't need to be running full because somebody's finished their rice for the season and they're not actually going to put in an autumn crop or something like that, and there's no stock domestic pipelines down there. So we could potentially run things in different modes, and that's the flexibility that the system allows, and that's the point of difference, essentially, one of the main points of difference of the control system, that we can run different channels in the same operational area in different modes to be able to do things more efficiently. So by the end of the next season, we're looking to have the control room contacting you about issues before you know there's something wrong, and we'll be proactive about that. We'll have standardised operations and service levels and our consistent channel performance, which will allow us to move into that flexibility area. So that's the control system, where we're up to and where we're looking to get to over the next season.
For those that I haven't met, I'm looking around the room, I know a fair few of you guys. My name's Josh Bode. I'm the Customer Operations Business Manager, and really my 2 areas of accountability within Scott's team is the water accounting and all things water well, which we've talked to over the last few years, and also managing the customer accounts team, which is really what we want to concentrate on, giving you a few examples and talking about today. So the guys are in the room, which we'll go around and we'll get them to put their hands up. So we've got Freda, he's there. We've got Laura, has taken off. That's all right. We've got Lauren down the back from over Finn City Way, and we've got Glenn McCalman down the back as well. So really, they're the guys that you'll see when one of your inquiries comes through the Pathways model and Jeff's team doesn't resolve it, and the knowledge experts don't resolve it, and it gets through to us. These are the guys that you'll see having the customer relationship. So where there needs to be a relationship managed between the company and the customer, these are the guys that you'll be talking to. So really, we're here to do 3 things. When we dumb it all down and we be really, really simple, we're here to do 3 things. 1, we're here to help the front line, so help the customer service centre. So we're looking at data on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, listening to conversations, hearing the trends that are coming in from the field via the front line, and what we're there to do is try to implement some strategies to reduce the number of phone calls coming through. That's not to say we don't want you to call, okay, but if we're hearing a lot of information or a lot of questions coming through on a certain topic, like flow shares for instance, well then we need to get onto the front foot and really push back out, okay, and create some educational tools or have some one-on-one conversations to really resolve those questions so that you don't have to be ringing up and asking questions all the time. As Jeff alluded to, what we really want to get to is a self-service model, which is the best way for you guys. Okay, so when we're hearing those discussions, all the stuff we're trying to do is help Jeff's team reduce the number of calls so that we can answer your questions in a better way. We're here to help the customer. Okay, so we're helping the front line and we're helping the customer. The way we do that is dealing with your complex inquiries. Okay, I've just had a conversation with a customer this morning, okay, around their purchase of a new property, and they're looking to get higher flows onto their property. That's where we come in. Okay, so one of the customer accounts team will come out. exactly scope out exactly what you want to achieve. I want to go from 30 megs to 60 megs. I want to go from 15 megs to 30 megs, whatever it might be. We can go through the process and scope out the whole from A to Z, set your expectation, let you know how the process goes, give you a price if we need to do any works, and manage that all the way through. So that's where they'll be holding your hand, going all the way through to get the outcome that you're achieving. As Jeff mentioned before, one of the processes that's going to come into custom operations is the permanent trade process. So one of the customer accounts team, when we get an inquiry that comes in, will come out or over the phone or whatever suits your business. Okay, have a sit down and a conversation to understand what you're trying to achieve through your permanent trade transaction. Are you simply buying a property that you're going to amalgamate in? Do you need to merge them? Are they in different entities? What's the best outcome you're looking for? When we know that from the start, we can get to the end a lot better. And we're here to help achieve the company's objectives. So a great one that we're working on at the moment is Adelaide and my team works really close together. As Adelaide mentioned before, we've got $1 billion worth of assets in the field. Back in the day when we were non-privatised, okay, we put access bridges in everywhere. You wanted an access bridge, they probably put one in. Okay, you go out to Walkall, they're everywhere. Okay, now we're at a point now they're putting the 40s and 50s, we need to replace them. So one of the projects and strategies that we're working on is if these access bridges are coming up to a point in time that need replacing, we'll probably come out and have a conversation with you to see, do you really need that access bridge? Can we do some other works? You're looking to put an outlet in. Oh, okay, can we subsidise and cost share by not upgrading that bridge, but we might be able to help you with some other works? Or can we just get rid of that bridge because you don't use it anymore and we can see you haven't driven over it in 55 years? Can we give you some temporary water to use on farm and we can get rid of that bridge and save some money? So they're the strategies that we're working on one-on-one with. And that's where, again, where you need that customer relationship, that's where my team will come in. And really here's the four main things we do. As I just mentioned, complex service inquiries, quality issues, which I'll touch a little bit more on over the next couple of slides, because I just want to take you through the process on when something goes wrong, this is what you should expect. And then the two probably bigger ones for this season that we kind of concentrate on is customer education and intelligence gathering. Okay, so our guys are in the field and the push is going to be really, they're going to be out there this year, having conversations with you to understand what your service levels need to be. And Jeff, I'm happy that you brought it up because it's come up at Walkall a couple of times as well, 4 changes a day. So our guys are going to be out having a conversation with you around what service levels you need, what service levels you don't utilise, what's some good ideas for the future. We'll then pub test that across the footprint, put a business case together, approved or not approved, we implement it. So the 4 changes a day is one of the topics at the moment. So our guys will be coming around and having a conversation about that. But the more we can get from what you need and what you want, we can then come back to you and say, yes, we can go back to TCC, but it's going to cost you X amount a year. Or yes, we can do gold-plated bridges, but it's going to cost you X amount a year. So really what I want to do here is just quickly step you through what happens when something goes wrong. So when Jared's control system opens up the wrong outlet, or doesn't open up the right one, or there's weeds in the channel and it goes over the bank, or someone leaves a gate open and the sheep run out. Okay, what happens at the moment is we become aware of the process of the problem. Now at the moment we can become aware of those types of things through when you ring up and tell us when something's wrong. The process is we fix the bleed straight away. We close the gate. Jared will make sure he opens up the right outlet. We then make good with the customer. We do an investigation and we put some actions in place so it doesn't happen again. At the moment, this is probably where our slow part is. Okay, and we've done some processes internally to fix that up. Okay, but where we want to get to, okay, is simply this. We will become aware of something's gone wrong before you know, and we'll fix it before we have to make good with the customer. So for instance, you probably would have been getting, and we're probably 70% of the way there through the control system. You probably would have got some phone calls over the last year or so to say, can we flush your outlet? So that's the control system monitoring to say you've got silt in your slip meter. So we've become aware of a problem through the triage process. You've received a phone call, we've flushed the outlet, we've fixed the problem before we have to make good with the customer. So this is where we want to get to. This is, as I said, we're probably 70% of the way there. We've got a bit more work to do, but the idea is we've got all this technology now. We should know what's going wrong before you are aware of it, and we fix it before it becomes an issue. Now, one of those, when we do an investigation where something goes wrong, we've got to implement some corrective actions. So sometimes the corrective actions could be perceived as a bit of a service level drop for you guys. And here's a great example. So pretty topical at the moment internally. One of our issues is we've got 20% of our orders are being placed via the phone. So last season we had 28,000 orders placed. 6,000 of them were done manually over the phone. Now, if you get 2 human beings involved having Chinese whispers over the phone 6,000 times, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be a problem there at some stage. The customer calls up, places the order with one of the operators. The operator either hears the wrong outlet, the customer tells the wrong outlet, the operator puts the wrong outlet in the computer with fat fingers, the wrong outlet opens. 2 days later, the customer rings up and says, I've just put a heap of urea on that ground that I didn't want to irrigate just yet. You've flooded me out. You need to now pay me some compensation. So one of the things we're going to be working on this season, and this will be with my team, is that there's a very small amount of people that always order online, that always order over the phone. Okay, we want to work with those guys to understand why we can't utilise the online portal. And there might be reasons for that. And we want to understand those reasons, and we want to implement fixes so that this stuff doesn't happen. Because at the end of the day, when we need to pay compensation, and it has happened, and it does happen, that's coming out of your pocket. That's coming out of it costs the company money. So we've got to make sure that we're putting actions in place so that we can mitigate that risk. Not a service level drop. Still ring us when something goes wrong. Still ring us when there's an outlet you need to change and there's an emergency call you need to stop. But we just want to make sure that we're reducing that number. If we can get that to 90, we're at 80% at the moment. If we can get to 90, 95%, it'll be a very good outcome this year. What you can expect, so here are our measurables for the season, and this is, we talked about, Jeff sort of said this is where I mentioned it. So the idea is when you call in and you've got an inquiry, whatever it might be, Jeff's team's aim is to resolve 80% of them in the first instance. So within the first business day, within that business day, they'll knock off 80% of those phone calls. Last year, Jeff's team did 83. Great effort, they were understaffed. Yes, we had a lot less calls, but they knocked them off. When there's a complex inquiry, when something's gone wrong, when you need a customer relationship, the idea is that the service level you should expect is that within 2 business days, one of the accounts team guys will give you a call to set your expectation and take you through the process. So for instance, if you ring up and say, I want a new stock and domestic pipe, within 2 days, our guys have called you, made an appointment to meet you on farm. Now that appointment might be in 3 months' time, but they've rang you and walked you through the process. Now at the moment last year, and this is not their fault, this is my fault, because we haven't put this as a priority. This is going to be the number 1 priority for the year. Okay, we only hit 60% of the time. So now our real focus will be when you call up and the front line sort of says, yes, this will go through to the accounts team, you'll get a phone call back within 2 days to set the expectation up. And of those, we'll close them out within 14 days. Now, we did hit that pretty well last year. We had 95% we closed out. But when you think about, we had 15,500 inward inquiries last year. How many come through to us? 1,150 come through to us. Okay, so 95% closeout sounds pretty good. That 5% still 50 odd people. So 50 odd people had a bad experience with either their quality or their service level not getting closed out in time, and that's what we need to improve. And again, that's not the guys in the room's fault, that's management's fault, my fault, for we haven't been pushing this. Now we've got the tools and systems set up, okay, that's going to be our concentration. So just to recap, just the 4 or 5 things that we really do, okay. Education and online communication is going to be a really big concentration point for the year. Okay, we're going to be moving to an online comms hub. As Jeff sort of said, we want to get to a self-service place. Okay, we want to have a library of resources online with podcasts, with videos, with fact sheets, troubleshooting things. We want to have things. We want to have a library there where you can go and say, how do flow shares work? How do restrictions work? And there's a resource online that you can go and look at. These customer meetings. You know, we haven't had a great attendance there. We want to have pre-recorded customer meetings weekly, quarterly, monthly, whatever it might be, a new update, just to keep all the information from within the company pushing back out. Targeted engagement. Okay, I'll go across that in the next slide. It's probably a little bit more relevant for what we're doing over the next few weeks at War Cool, but there's a few areas around here we're going to target as well. And really here, this is what we're talking around what Jeff sort of talked about, understanding your needs and continuous improvement. The guys are going to be in the field, listening to the phone calls, looking at the data, understanding what you guys want, what needs to be improved, going through the process to see if that's viable, see if it's wanted across the footprint, putting together the business case, either getting it approved or not. So as I said, targeted education. Last year in War Cool, we had restrictions everywhere. So there was a little bit on the bottom of the Moolameen and Darwilly, and there's a few hot spots down where Lewis is, down the bottom of the Berrigan extension. So we're starting at War Cool in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be coming out this side. We're targeting these areas to come and have a conversation with you and educate you on what happens when we hit capacity, how flow shares work, and how the system operates in restrictions. Okay, and we're going to be talking to you about, okay, what's the plans for the year? All the word around, obviously, with 110% allocation is a massive summer cropping campaign. So we're going to be coming to have a chat with you guys, okay, around what your intentions are. And Finley 3 too.
Flow shares is something that's sort of thinks fair bit out of date. It's sort of something of the 1980s. Like delivery entitlements is our new world, I sort of think. Are we looking at trying to upgrade the system and not be antiquated in the old flow share from back before NIL?
At the moment, there's a...
Before, I'm just hoping that
At the moment, everything's based off the flow share. Once we hit restrictions, there's nothing in the imminent future that's going to change that. So we've got a flow share policy that we abide to through the works, through the distribution rules policy. When we hit restrictions, flow shares manage them at the moment.
So it's not looking at upgrading that in any way, shape or form?
Not at the moment, no. No.
You can put in a request to look at upgrading certain sections to channel 11. That is a possibility.
Yeah, but Nev's talking about aligning them with delivery entitlements. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So if you're in, if you're in an area that you've had restrictions over the last year, really, okay, we're going to be coming and have a chat to you. There's hotspots everywhere. Not everywhere. There's a few hotspots on certain channels. We want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence so that, you know, if there's two of you down the bottom of a 20 meg spur, that you're not going to put 400 acres of rice in each, just so that we have those conversations. Really, that's me.
Thanks, Josh. Michael Pizzasali for some of the people I haven't met. Just, I guess, before we get started, last week RGA rolled out, finalised what's called the Water Toolkit. So they did this a few years ago. This is actually a pretty handy little document for all things generally water policy related, especially related to how the allocations work and why. So Irrigation's bought a few copies of RGA, and we're going to place copies in the Finley Denny in the War Cool office. We've got about 20 or 30 here today, but certainly encourage anyone who just wants to get their head around a little bit more about, you know, the water policy and allocation frameworks and why for the Murray Valley. It's probably worth, I think it's worth having read this document. So something that we've got there and we can make available to shareholders. When we get the online version, we'll put that in talking more over the next couple of weeks. And so everyone's got an online version, but also there will be some hard copies as well. And today, feel free to grab a few. So I've been involved in water policy now for a couple of years, and I guess just want to give you a bit of a snapshot and update on just some of the couple of projects we've been working on. And I guess importantly, some of the communication and the messages. And I guess the key thing is, if you're like me, I'll get quite a bit worked up if you look at the media too much, especially stuff about the 450 and all sorts of guff around further water recovery. It is certainly a concern. I wake at night, like lots of others, worrying about what to do and how do you navigate the best way through some of these problems. One of the approaches we're taking is trying to put forward solutions to politicians and to government, because often they hear people, it's a problem, and they'll say, well, what do you want me to do to fix it? So one of the approaches we're deliberately taking is to put forward a solution. So that way, when other people try to talk down and say, well, we made this decision because you didn't offer any solutions, we can say, actually we did, and we provide a really, really good one. It's a lot harder for other people to talk that down in a debating forum. One of our approaches is with the basin plan, we have been impacted. So when we privatised, we had about 1.2 million water entitlements in our licence. Today we've got about 800,000. 350,000 of those has been water acquired through various water recovery mechanisms. It's a big chunk. It's about 30% of our licence. We have been impacted, and we certainly could be further impacted in the future is the worry. The basin plan has largely been achieved. So you hear this figure of 2750, 2,100 gigs of that has largely been recovered. And there's a remaining volume was called the 605, which is SIDLAM mechanism. And that's about if you do the works on ground, we don't theoretically then need to recover that water. So that's an important part of the basin plan. And this whole thing about the 450 sits actually on top of all of that again. So one of the key things is when we talk to government departments or politicians, our key messaging is you don't need to recover more water, you've just got to use it smarter. And we've got a proposed project or a solution that will work. One of the issues we have, if we say the basin plan hasn't worked, it's stuffed, have you guessed what the response is? Any ideas? Well, we need to get more water then to make it. We just need to keep getting more water until we finally get there. So we're just going to be careful of, if we say something doesn't work, sometimes it's just great fodder for other entities to go, righto, well, we need more. And there's plenty of other entities out there that are agitating for more and actually a heck of a lot more. So I guess we're kind of mindful of what the response could be. So we've deliberately said, we think with the water you've recovered, we can seriously kick some environmental goals, and we've actually got a project we can put forward. It also turns out this project does benefit our region in other ways as well. So why do you think we would think this has got merit? Well, one of the things that recovering volume under the basin plan, got the Murray River here, and our channels sit about here. It's pretty high in the landscape, isn't it? If you were to cut a slice from our channels all the way through to the Murray River, there's a massive difference in height. And all in between are all the creeks and wetlands and things that sit in the landscape. And drives of the basin plan, among other things, has been, well, we need to get more volumes of water so we can send a big volume down the river to get it high enough to try to get to some of these systems. So I guess a volumetric way of trying to get water to these sites would be to recover big volumes of water. And some of these creeks, for example, just down the road here, we've got the Tupple Creek. The Murray River's got to be flowing at about 50 to 70,000 megs a day just to get the water high enough to touch that creek. Now, it's a big volume of water, isn't it? And that's a worry, of course, when it comes to this whole thing about, well, we need more water for the basin plan. If you think about, well, let's focus on the environmental outcomes, do what a farmer would do, well, let's be efficient with that water to get the environmental outcomes. What we could be doing is using, for example, our channel system, and we can put 20 megs a day, 50 megs a day, or 100 megs a day into these systems to simulate an environmental flooding event. Most creatures don't really care how the water gets there. As long as it gets there and it flows the right time of year, etc. Beautiful. So a couple of hundred megs a day in volume is a big difference to 50 to 70,000 megs a day, isn't it? So hence that narrative of you don't need more volume, you just need to be smarter with what you got, and we can help with that. So that's why we're, I guess, trying to push this narrative, because it makes environmental sense. It's very hard for environmental camps to talk the concept down, because it genuinely does work. So we've taken lots of tours with various ministers and various agencies, and they've actually really intuitively liked what we've presented as well. So here's a bit of an image of our region. We're actually really uniquely placed in the Southern Basin. You've got the Murray River here. We've got all these little boxes which are called escape structures that coincidentally happen to drop into natural systems. There's at least 68 of them throughout our footprint, and we've got thousands of kilometres of environmental assets in our footprint, and there's some cards up our sleeve that we can use to help work through these issues. And what we can do is we can divert that water above the choke, and all these arrows represent places where we can strategically put water into all various parts of the system. Those creeks and rivers and things all link together, and they all join the Murray downstream. So hence the reason of the name, it's called the Murray Reconnected Floodplains, is because what we are is reconnecting ecosystems back to the Murray River. So it's a narrative that's resonating in a number of government circles. So you can see here what we're proposing is divert this water. The Environment Water Holder's got about 850,000 water entitlements related to the Murray, so Vic, New South Wales, SA water above and below the choke that theoretically can be utilised. So they're a big entity now, and we're looking at using a big chunk of that water in our footprint. So examples are, you've got the Tupple Creek just down the road, and the landholders are really keen to get this because most people are really keen to have a creek in their backyard flowing with water. And voila! The government's, to their credit, the New South Wales government actually found a couple of $1 million for us, and they fully funded the replacement of these escape structures. So previously we could only get 40 megs a day from old escape structures, which we didn't touch in the modernisation program because we don't theoretically need them. But the government's found 100% of the cash without any need at all of giving back any water or anything. So it was just 100% government funded. So we now upgraded those escapes, and we can now put 200 megs a day into that system. So last year we delivered nearly 90,000 megalitres, nearly 100,000 megalitres of this environmental water in our system, and it's growing. So, and we do benefit in lots of other ways with delivering that water. And there's a wetland on farm before and after, lots of ducks. And we're using the farmer's outlet to get water in there. So the point is, we specialise in getting water onto stuff. If you ever want to get something to happen, a farmer will do it. Whether tipping water on a crop, we can utilise the same ideas of putting water on the wetland. What we're seeking is about $200 million to do all this stuff on ground. And what we're also seeking is recognition of buybacks, so to help offset that risk. Again, we'll put our Irrigate hat on. That's a handy looking regulator, isn't it? We've got 1,200 of them. I'll put my environmental hat on. That's one of the world's best oxygenators you can use. So in the 2016 flooding event, we saved millions of fish from dying with governments using our escape structures to put back into rivers and creeks, because all the fish sat behind that water and breathe. So one of the biggest environmental risks is a flooding event. All the leaf litter in the forest dissolves, and you hear of hypoxic blackwater events. You've sometimes heard that. They can unfold within a matter of weeks, and they can kill fish by the absolute millions. So nature's not perfect either, and one of the best ways to fix that is to send water through an irrigation channel, oxygenate it along its way, and then it can actually drop back out of an escape. So we've done that a couple of times now, and we're a really important system to be able to save fish. The other thing that's of interest is when we start tipping water out of some of these creeks. This is on the Thule Creek west of here. The fish people have gotten pretty excited about this. They get very excited about the small native fish. And the only way those fish could have got there is via our channel system. So we're also a native fish redistribution network as well. So we're not just a channel system, we've got lots of these environmental merits. So, and it's mainly the small ones. Often we hear see the signature stuff about the yellow belly and the cod, but the fish people mainly get excited about these small ones, which you don't see very often. So when we talk about where we'd like to spend the money, we are seeking about $200 million. We would spend that money on fixing up escapes that we just haven't touched, to put water into creeks. What we're also proposing to do is, say for example, this creek splits your farm in half, and that's an access crossing that a farmer has put in, like say an old 600 pipe or something. We would put in a fish-friendly box culvert, because that's what the fish people want, so we'll pay for that and put that in, 100% of the cost, and hand that back. And where that fence crosses the creek, we'd give the landholder some cash to replace that fence and putting something that's happy to tolerate a bit more water going through it, or rusting, or that kind of stuff. So that's a big chunk of area where we'd spend money. We'd also do, if farmers have got farm wetlands, and you'd be surprised how many is out there. There's nearly 2,000 farm wetlands, and we've got about 2,000 kilometres of creeks and ephemeral creek systems. So it's very, very significant. If you add up the hectares, it's about 74,000 hectares, almost twice what the 450 program's trying to achieve. So it's pretty significant. And if farmers want to do stuff on their wetlands, again, we'd like to pay for that at 100% of the costs. We'll get a survey in. That could be the farmer's outlet up there, but we'll build a supply channel, put a crossing in, and that could be the wetland for that. So we actually would model it very similar to the Land Water Management Plan program, where we actually work really closely with landholders who provide input in how to shape the rules and the program and how we rolled out the cash. It's one of the best programs we've rolled out. So that's a key narrative about how to use environmental water efficiently. So the key thing is, you heard that messaging earlier, you just need to use what you got smarter and much more efficient, and we can help with that project. The next project we're working on is the intelligent use of water. And this is the other one you saw in that image earlier. There is this issue that MDBA river ops have got with trying to, with the Barmah choke. It is choking up. River ops have an obligation to deliver, on average, about 4,000 gigs of water downstream. So 1,850 just to South Australia alone, plus on either side of the river down below the choke, if you add up the water in an average allocation year. So it's a volume they have to get. They're looking at 6 options. We're one of those options. One of the key reasons why we're keen to participate and get involved is what we're seeking is to use a chunk of that water also through our footprint. And doing this concept, that is, imagine that same ephemeral creek, putting environmental water, then what we can do is put consumptive water on top of that, i.e. that water that's designated for downstream. A bit like how we've got a conveyance licence to fill up our channels, and we park your water on top of it, don't we, to get out of the outlet. So we can actually park that downstream water on top of our water. Again, there's lots of other benefits to Murray Irrigation by doing that, but it also fits this other part of the narrative, because we can see Basin Plan 2.0 emerging, which is another few years down the track. We can say you don't need to buy more water, you just need to be more, you just need to have intelligent use of the water that you've already got. So tipping an extra 200 or 300 or 400 gigs of this water on top of, say, environmental water is like the equivalent of recovering that water, because you're kicking an environmental goal on its way to its final destination. So some key parts in terms of our narrative with the environmental water use and utilising the river ops water as well.